Psalm 13. How long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and day after day have sorrow in my heart? How long will my enemy triumph over me? Look on me and answer, Lord my God. Give light to my eyes, or I will sleep in death. And my enemy will say, I've overcome him, and my foes will rejoice when I fall. But I trust in your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation. I will sing the Lord's praise, for he has been good to me. Psalm 13, I have shared with you before. It's a pretty foundational text for me. I think it's Psalm 13 and other Psalms of lament that give us a great model example of how it is we can faithfully follow God in times of darkness, in times of personal difficulty, in times where it seems like the enemies and foes are winning, where the equation isn't working out. Where God feels distant. And if we're honest, that's part of this journey of following God. I love at the end of Psalm 13, the psalmist almost has a discipline of mind to remember that although I'm in this dark moment, not sensing the Lord, seeing the Lord, where everything else is winning, there's a discipline of mind to go, but I'm going to stick with this and stick with you, God, and because in the past I've experienced you. About 2 hours or so before the killings in Atlanta this week, there was a national report put out that only affirmed and confirmed what so many of you and our church family have shared with me and have gone through personally in this last year. The report, you're probably familiar with it now. The report showed a significant uptick, a huge percentage increase of hate crimes that have been happening to those of Asian American and Pacific Islander descent, especially during this pandemic season. Those aren't just national headlines. If you're not connected to someone in our congregation or locally in our community, know that since the very early days of pandemic, pre-pandemic, we were already walking with those in our congregation as they experienced these kinds of hate crimes in stores, in their homes, as they were going about their life. And so it's in that context of what's happening nationally that when these murders happened, and 6 of those victims are of Asian descent, it's not inappropriate to connect the real fear, anger, and frustration that many are experiencing. Psalm 13 isn't just a psalm, if you have skin color like mine, it's not just a psalm for them at this time, but as a church and as a people of God across the walls that typically divide people from people. We want to be a church of all peoples, all generations. When one part of our people, when one part of our body, the scripture says, is hurting, the rest of the body hurts and suffers. And so if you have yet to declare to the Lord a psalm of lament on behalf of what our Asian brothers and sisters, our Asian descent brothers and sisters are experiencing, I would ask you to do so. And I would ask you to be reminded as well, Lake Avenue Church, what a great privilege and unique experience God's called us to be, a church of all peoples. And at times I'm very familiar that's difficult. And yet, especially over this last year, as we have seen time and time again, acts of violence and racism and murder and death, that just lands differently in a community where those peoples aren't out distant from us, but are within us. I'm reminded, and I want to remind you, that we declared 3 all-church goals in our summer congregational meeting. And the second one is a goal we've had for years around racial reconciliation. In fact, we have sensed in this season, we have other goals, we're going to talk about those next week, but we have sensed in this season that we need some help in how we go about that. And so a few months ago, you met Adrian Pay, who has become a great friend, not only of mine, but so many of us in this congregation. And just an update on that, because I think it's timely given where we are. But since the interview that Adrian and I had in January, he has been connecting with so many of you throughout our congregation. Thank you for those who have reached out to him, who have spent time talking with him. As he's listened to your input, he's heard some things, and I want to bring that update. He's heard a desire that we need a clear, Bible-based discipleship framework for racial reconciliation that is accessible and relational. And so I'm here to bring update that he's been working with our racial reconciliation ministry team, our staff, our ministry council, me individually, and to develop this with a healthy and open process. And so after Easter, we're going to have more update for you. Adrian will actually be coming to our ministry council meeting to bring a report this next week. But when we declared this goal in August, I wasn't hoping that God would confirm this in ways of horror and death and racial violence. But the reality of the brokenness of our world only confirms to us that I believe God has built us for this moment, Lake Avenue Church. He has built us to be his church in this moment. What a great privilege. And so reach out to one another, care for one another, love one another, pray a prayer of lament, pray a prayer of hope for one another. This is our moment, Lake, and I believe we're built for this moment. I pray that you believe so as well. Part of what I think has made it super difficult for so many of us is just the distance. I mean, how unnatural. We have a faith that calls us to be, when crisis hits and when worship hits and when life hits, that we're to be with one another, connected to one another. And yet what we've learned is the way we love one another in this season is by keeping distance. And it's counterintuitive. It's difficult to wrap our brains around. But I just want you to know, what you know is that if you're comfortable, we're back. And so this weekend, both Comunidad and Lake Avenue Church worship services, we're back. And so signups are open for you to come. I pray that you feel, if you're comfortable and you'd like to be here for our 9:00 service, you'll do so. We're going to keep our 11:30. We've seen tremendous growth in that, just even in the last few weeks. And so this weekend, 9 and 11:30. But signups are live, which would mean next weekend, Palm Sunday, the same kind of thing. Signups will be out there and ready for 9 a.m. and 11:30 outside. And also, we shared with you last week several times that we have 5 Easter services, and those signups will be ready this weekend. And you can sign up to be indoor with us at 9 or 11, outdoor with us either at 7 a.m., 2 p.m. or 4 p.m. They're all going to be wonderful experiences. All of those links will be embedded in the video or underneath. And I look forward to being with you this weekend. We're going to continue in our series in John. It is a timely text for us. I'll be honest, I got more work to do on this. It's Friday morning as I record this, but it's this beautiful passage. It's John 15 where Jesus basically says, if you love me, you're going to keep my commands. Keeping commands of Jesus is difficult. And I believe that there's some reasons the scripture gives us as to why it's difficult. But I also believe that we have this because I believe we're built for this moment. Like, if we can come together and seek to honor the Lord, to keep his commands together, man, I think we've got a real shot at watching the Lord move in some powerful ways. So I look forward to being with you this weekend, to bring you that message, to worship with you. And I hope to see many of you either at 9 or 11:30, but always online as well. Lake Avenue Church, you're deeply loved. Love one another well right now. Care for one another well. Resist the temptations of this world to divide, to critique, to minimize, and run toward loving one another. I pray you can do that. I pray that I can do that. We'll see you this weekend.